Hey everyone, today I'm going to be presenting on reinforcing effort and providing recognition. So why is this important? It is important because it will reshape the student's belief about their own competence, controlling of the learning process, so their control of the learning process, and establishing a purpose for working towards academic goals. So what happens when you as the teacher recognize students' efforts and their hard work? What happens is the inner motivation of the student and their drive to engage will be increased, and their motivation and drive to complete assignments will be increased as well. The relationship between effort and achievement is when you recognize the student's efforts, they will persevere when working on a difficult task. This is in most cases. So if you recognize that a student's working hard, what are they going to do? They're not just going to sit there. Hopefully they're going to, in turn, keep working hard because they want to show you that they are hard workers and that they can do this. They want to show themselves as well. Let's see. Classroom practices, rules to live and learn by, and points worth praising. So the first one being rules to live and learn by. What is it? It's a technique that is used to establish behavioral guidelines that promote a positive learning environment. What are the benefits? The students learn how to identify the actions and behaviors that will lead them to academic and social success. What are the basic steps? So there are 7 steps in this classroom practice. First, you want to ask the question, what is the main reason we come to school? Hopefully their answer will be to learn. Maybe ask with that, what does learning mean to you? Then you want to write down their answers on a board. Then you'll lead into the discussion of telling the students that you want them to learn and you want to help them to learn and that you expect them to work to learn as well. You want to explain 2 rules that you want them to follow. Ask them to discuss in groups the purpose of those rules that will help them to learn. So rule 1 being be the best student that you can be and learn as much as possible. Rule 2, make the classroom a good place for everyone to learn and live in. You want to explain in step 3 why the rules have been created, and that is up to the students to figure out how to follow the rules. As an activity, ask the students to brainstorm a list of ways that they could do this, ways that they could act, and things that they could do to support each rule. Record their ideas on a board. My suggestion would be maybe to get them in groups. Say you have 25 students, make 5 groups and have in each group, the groups come up with 3 different things that they could act, ways that they could act, and things that they could do. Then you're going to record their ideas on the board. Step 4, fine-tune the list of rule-supporting behaviors, also known as behavioral guidelines, together as a class. You want to help the students to eliminate or combine similar ideas, express ideas clearly, and replace negative language with positive language. The guidelines should state that what they should do versus what they shouldn't do. Again, that positive language. You want to post the final list of behavioral guidelines on the board, on a chart, whatever you want to do, post them in your classroom and explain and model each guideline. I know that if you have young children in your classroom, say maybe K2, the best thing for you to do is really be specific with those and even maybe have them create skits if they're able to, of what the list said that they could do and ways that they could act to implement and support each rule. Make the classroom rules and guidelines a way of life versus things that are only followed and implemented during the first week of school. We know that our teachers, when we were in K-12, always did this. They had their rules, but were they really implemented throughout the year? More than likely not. You want to target specific guidelines for review throughout the year. And as a teacher, you need to enforce compliance with posted guidelines throughout the year as well. Students can monitor and assess compliance, and if needed, discuss the strategies for improvement. If you have a raise your hand before talking rule, and they are not following that, you need to make sure you go to that rule. You talk about what is expected. You talk about ways that they could make sure they're doing this. You make sure that the students monitor each other. and they need to monitor themselves and assess how they're acting and if they're following that rule or not. 6, let's see. Oh, we missed 7. 7, acknowledge the students' efforts to make the classroom a good place to learn and live. You can do this by praising individual students or the class as a whole for following the guidelines that were agreed upon. Again, be specific with what you're telling them. So I know for me in my preschool class that I work with some days, if you call out one student and you say, such and such, you are doing such a good job of being quiet while working on this task, the other students are going to listen to that. And they're going to see, well, they're getting told that they're doing something good, but she's not telling me that I'm doing something good. So maybe I should model and act as that student is acting. That will get their attention. I do think addressing the class as a whole is a good idea, but I really think praising individual students works really well. I know we had a fire drill the other day and the other afternoon, and when we did that, we really encouraged them, like, class, you did a really good job this afternoon by following the rules that we've set up during these fire drills. Praising them, letting them know you did a good job. That is important. And telling them what they did that was specific. Specifically telling them what they did right is important as well. Okay, so how is this tool used in the classroom? It is used to establish rules and guidelines that promote student learning and inspire effort, and to involve students in the process of establishing classroom rules and guidelines. Some teacher tips: share the responsibility of establishing classroom rules and guidelines with the students. Explain the guidelines. Do not assume that the students understand them. Be specific and model. Make the classroom rules a way of life. Make classroom, you want to revise, review, and enforce the guidelines throughout the year. You need to use friendly and age-appropriate language when discussing the guidelines. You need to turn the list of rules and guidelines into a classroom compact, have the students sign their name to the final document, and then post that so they know that they have signed up to follow these rules and guidelines. And through doing that, they will be committed. Something that I see is really important is reviewing, revising, and enforcing the guidelines throughout the year. What is the point of doing all of this work if you're not going to review them, if you're not going to revise them when needed, and if you're not going to enforce them throughout the year? More than likely, your classroom management will be lacking, and you will show them that you set up things, but you do not follow through with them. So I really think that following these teacher tips really sets up a classroom as a great environment to live and learn in. So I think these teacher tips are really great, and I think the idea of even having the students being involved in making those rules and guidelines is great as well, because what you think is important may be difficult for them to understand and may be difficult for them to follow through with. So if you work with them on creating those rules and guidelines and that they feel heard, then they are more likely to participate and follow those guidelines as well. So moving on to points worth praising. What is it? It's a tool that helps students provide, or helps teachers provide praise that is specific and addresses established learning goals. What are the benefits of using this tool? So by shifting the focus from points that need fixing to points worth praising, we decrease discouraging attitudes. We encourage them to look at what they did well and to continue doing it in the future or on future assignments. So in this one we have 4 steps, so let's go over the basic steps that they have set up for us. Review an assignment that students have completed. Identify points worth praising by looking for the following: evidence that a specific learning goal or target has been met, evidence that the piece fulfills specific criteria of success, such as criteria on a rubric or checklist, evidence that all the required elements are present or that the appropriate steps were followed, evidence of progress. Is there an aspect of this piece that shows improvement? Evidence that the student has mastered critical vocabulary terms, content, or procedures. Evidence that the student has responded to prior feedback that you have given. Evidence that the student has put forth the significant effort. And finally, evidence that the student has used appropriate strategies thinking processes to complete the task, outlining thoughts before writing, or using a rubric to self-assess their work. Step 3, share these positive points with students verbally or in writing. Be as clear and specific as possible so students are able to understand what they've done well. Writing them a note, telling them what they've done well, pulling them aside, talking to them, being definitely specific and clear on what you're saying to them is important, because you do not need to assume that they are understanding all that you're saying, because then you're wasting both of your time trying to discuss something that the student is not getting. So definitely being intentional and making sure you know how to reach that student in an appropriate language is important so that we can see growth. Encourage students to take note of the things they did well and make a conscious effort to continue doing them. Encourage them, encourage them, encourage them, so that they know that what they're doing is great and that they know that they should continue this in the future. We don't want to just see this behavior once. We want to continue to see them. So how is this tool used in the classroom? It is used to acknowledge quality work and reinforce student effort. Some teacher tips being the praise that is given should address specific aspect of the student's work and not the students themselves. The points worth praising framework can be used to assess students and help the students assess their own strengths in their own work. To do this, give a list of the steps or of the points worth praising from step 2, maybe making that more age appropriate. And explain the list using age-appropriate language, and instruct them to mark and describe the positives in their assignments before turning them in. So meaning that they're going through the assignment from that checklist and making sure they've hit each point and making sure that they know what they've done right in this assignment before they even turn it in, so that they can assess what they need to go back and do, fix, and maybe even how they do an assignment next time. So the summary: reinforcing effort and providing recognition. It reshapes the student's own beliefs about their competence, control of the learning process, and establishing a purpose for working towards academic goals. It involves students in the process of establishing classroom rules and guidelines. It is used to establish rules and guidelines that will promote student learning and inspire effort. So in our rules to live and learn by, it will establish rules that are concrete and can be used to make the classroom a better place to live and learn. And having the students make a list will keep them engaged and heard, meaning having the students create their rules and guidelines with you will keep them engaged and heard. And points worth praising: helps the teacher provide praise that is specific, helps teachers provide praise that addresses learning goals and acknowledges quality work and reinforces student effort. These are really important, definitely knowing what the importance of reinforcing effort and providing recognition is for the student and how it helps you as the teacher. And then rules to live and learn by, again, the biggest thing is making sure you implement those throughout the year and making sure that the students feel heard in the rules and guidelines that you're creating and that you're creating together, and that they know how to follow through with them. And then in points worth praising, again, it's just important to use specific language and specific explanations, age-appropriate language, so that the student knows what is being done well and how to do that next time. So I'm ending this video here, and then I am going to be sending in another video that reviews the handout that I've created. All right, thanks.